Now you'll notice that I did one for log 1, log 2, and woodbox. And I could still have technically put these all on the same texture map, but I wanted to kind of control over my output resolution. So I do think that we could do these logs at a maybe even 512 resolution. And in the export settings, I'll show you how we can change those different options there. So let's go ahead and let's begin texturing. So first of all, let's look at our kind of firewood box here. So we can actually go to our smart materials, and we should be able to pull in that kind of painted wood material that we created earlier. And we can just go ahead and search that if you can't find it, but I know it's down here. And I can just go ahead and drag that onto our wood box. And you can decide if you want your wood texture to be painted or not. I don't want paint on my wood box. I want it to kind of have more of a natural wood look. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn off that paint layer. And it seems by default here that the scale is doing pretty well, and we're getting kind of a horizontal look across there. It looks like the kind of placement is good there on the side and on these boards. I want these to be a vertical orientation. So we're just gonna go ahead and do that little trick I gave you earlier. I'm also going to go ahead and change the colors a bit. So I'm going to come here into the wood base, and I want that base wood to look like a little bit more of a raw wood, not necessarily the same color as kind of all of our furniture and things that may have been stained. So I'm going to push this up just ever so slightly to the yellow and give it a little bit more of a brighter tone there. And if you want, you can go ahead and adjust the wood aging, though I feel pretty good about how that's looking. So I'm going to leave that there and leave this as my stylized paint wood. I'm going to rename this and call this one horizontal. And then I'm going to duplicate this layer, and I'm going to call this one vertical. And then unfortunately, there's really no quick way to kind of rotate everything as of this version of Substance Painter. As I said, they're almost always kind of bringing in, you know, various settings and things like that and listening to community feedback. But really the only thing we need to worry about is the wood grain. These other elements here, I don't feel that it's as dire that they be rotated. So we'll go ahead, let's grab this wood grain, and we can come up here and we can rotate this 90 degrees. We'll make sure to do the same thing for our height. And then we now need to do that for the wood wear to make sure that all of our grain matches. Let's go ahead, grab this wood grain, go 90. We'll grab this wood grain height, go 90. Now, as I mentioned before, what you can do is you can add a black mask here, and we can go to our object fill tool here, and we're just going to go ahead and grab those boards that we want to be a vertical orientation. Go ahead and do that there. And then, as we mentioned before, because these are stacked on each other with their blending modes, you always want to double check that that kind of base color blending mode, we can come here and we can look at our height, and we see that it can kind of be adding our height there. Now, as I mentioned before, you can go in there and you can change the blending modes, but another thing you can do is you can go ahead, create a black mask here. Let's grab this mask here. We will copy this mask. Then we will click this mask, and you need to make sure you have the mask selected to do this. We can right click, we can paste into mask, and then we can right click and we can invert mask. And then that way we don't have to worry about any of those normals or height information overlapping. And then if we go through and make changes to our layers, you know, it's going to kind of match up. Now, one thing I do want to note is that I do feel like when we kind of have edge wear on wood like this, it oftentimes is kind of like, I feel like the top of the wood is a little more worn. So let's go ahead, grab this wood wear here, and we can just go ahead and paint into that mask there if we want. So we will add a paint layer, and we can add this below our kind of slope blur to kind of keep that look. And you can choose any brush you want. I'm just going to use the kind of default brush there and click around the top there. And you can see that that slope blur is kind of interrupting kind of that blurry edge and giving that harsh look, which kind of sells the effect there. Now, this is a case where I do believe you could use symmetry, but I think a little bit of random wear here is good. So let's go ahead. With that, we kind of have our kind of wood box looking aged and kind of a little bit more natural. Feel free to keep tweaking those settings if you like. Now, as we've mentioned, those oil paint effects can really slow down the scene. So I'm going to grab these two here. I'm going to hit Control G and call this wood box. And I'm going to go ahead and turn that off, because I don't really want that slowing down my scene as I'm kind of working on the logs.